the burnout epidemic. Have you ever worked so hard you actually got worse at your job? Like you're pushing through those late nights, chugging coffee, powering through weekend work sessions, only to find yourself making stupid mistakes, forgetting important details, and feeling like your brain is wrapped in fog? Yeah, you're not alone. I've been there too, and it turns out there's actual science behind why this happens. What we're talking about is burnout, and it's basically become an epidemic. Seriously, burnout has gotten so bad that in 2019, the World Health Organization officially recognized it as an occupational phenomenon in their International Classification of Diseases. That's pretty major. They defined it as a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress that hasn't been successfully managed. And according to a recent Gallup study, 76% of employees experience burnout at least sometimes, with 28% saying they're burned out very often or always. Think about that. In your average office, 3 out of 4 people around you are experiencing some level of burnout, and nearly a third are basically living in burnout all the time. This indicates a systemic problem affecting workplaces everywhere. So what does burnout actually look like in real life? It goes beyond feeling tired or having a bad day. It's when your brain literally stops functioning the way it should. You read the same email 4 times and still can't process what it's saying. You stare at your screen, knowing you need to start a project, but your brain refuses to engage. Someone asks you a simple question in a meeting, and your mind goes completely blank. I remember a friend who's a graphic designer telling me how she once spent 3 hours on a simple logo revision that should have taken 20 minutes. She couldn't get her creative brain to work. Another friend who's an accountant started making calculation errors that even a beginner wouldn't make. These aren't signs of incompetence. They're symptoms of a brain in burnout. Burnout affects more than just your emotional state. It actually damages your cognitive function. Research from the Karolinska Institute found that chronic stress associated with burnout causes measurable changes in the brain's structure, particularly in areas responsible for memory, attention, and executive function. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that handles complex thinking, decision-making, and emotional regulation, literally starts shutting down. I learned this the hard way. A couple years ago, I was working on launching a new channel while holding down my day job. I was sleeping maybe 5 hours a night, working through weekends, and living on energy drinks and takeout. I thought I was being productive and dedicated. Then one day, I found myself sitting in my car in the parking lot crying because I couldn't remember if I was supposed to be arriving at work or leaving to go home. My brain had stopped processing basic information. I started making ridiculous mistakes, the kind that made me question if I even knew how to do my job anymore. This personal wake-up call led me to research what was happening, and what I discovered is that burnout is an actual physiological response. When you're chronically stressed, your body produces excessive cortisol, your primary stress hormone. In short bursts, cortisol is helpful. It gives you that boost of energy and focus when you need it. But when cortisol stays elevated for too long, it starts damaging your body and brain. A study from the University of California found that chronic stress shrinks the hippocampus, which is essential for memory formation. It also enlarges your amygdala, making you more reactive to stress and threats. At the same time, the neural connections in your prefrontal cortex start to weaken, making it harder to concentrate, solve problems, and regulate your emotions. This explains why you can't think straight when you're burned out. Your brain is literally being remodeled by stress, and not in a good way. Research from Stanford University found that when you work more than 50 hours per week, your productivity starts dropping dramatically. And beyond 55 hours, you're basically just spinning your wheels. You might be physically present for 70 hours a week, but your actual output would probably be higher if you just worked 40 hours and then went home. Our culture glorifies the grind and celebrates people who are always on. However, this approach actually makes us worse at our jobs, not better. It's like trying to drive a car that's running on fumes. You might keep moving forward for a while, but eventually you're going to break down completely. But here's the good news. There's a better way to work. and it's backed by science. There are evidence-based approaches that can help you achieve more while working less. And I'm not talking about productivity hacks or time management tricks. I'm talking about fundamental changes in how we approach work. Is working more hours actually making you less productive? The research is clear on this. Studies show that after 40 hours of work in a week, productivity actually drops by 50% for each additional hour. That means your 50th hour of work in a week is only producing half the results of your earlier hours. And it just gets worse from there. You're actively damaging your brain's ability to function well. But before we can fix this problem, we need to understand the myths that got us here in the first place. There are some deeply ingrained beliefs about productivity and success that are actually hurting us, and they're not based in reality. Myth number 1, more hours equals more success. The first myth we need to bust is one you've probably heard your whole life. Put in the hours and you'll get the rewards. We wear our 60-hour work weeks like badges of honor, but here's something wild. After 8 hours of mental work, your decision-making ability actually drops by 70%. Yep, those extra hours you're so proud of, they might be making you worse at your job. Think about the last time you stayed super late at work. Maybe you were trying to finish a project or impress your boss. But when you look back, was the work you did in hour 9, 10, or 11 actually any good? I'm guessing probably not. And there's a reason for that. This idea that longer hours equals better results is literally programmed into our culture. We glorify the hustle, celebrate the grind, and somehow equate exhaustion with dedication. We've all seen those LinkedIn posts. While you were sleeping, I was working. Like that's something to be proud of? But what does the research really say about this myth? When we look at the data, the truth becomes clear. The 40-hour work week was actually designed for factory workers, not for people doing complex cognitive tasks. Henry Ford adopted this schedule back in 1926 because his research showed that working longer hours actually decreased productivity. When workers pushed beyond 40 hours, they started making mistakes, having accidents, and the quality of work plummeted. Today, countries with the shortest work weeks demonstrate the highest productivity. Norway, Denmark, and Germany average around 27 hours of work per week, yet their productivity per hour surpasses countries with longer hours. Germany's productivity is 70% higher per hour than Greece, where they work almost 40% more hours. The evidence consistently shows that working longer doesn't translate to producing more. The impact on your brain when you push past your limits is significant. Scientists at Harvard Medical School found that mental fatigue accumulates throughout the day, making each additional hour progressively less effective. After 8 hours of cognitive work, your creative thinking ability drops by about 60%. Your attention narrows, errors increase, and your professional skills deteriorate. Think of your brain like a car with a fuel gauge. Your mental energy is the fuel, and complex thinking tasks rapidly deplete your tank. After several hours of focused work, you're running on empty. Your prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning, decision-making, and impulse control, begins to shut down. This is why you find yourself making simple mistakes or staring blankly at your screen after a long day. History's greatest minds understood these limitations. Charles Darwin worked about 3 hours a day, from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m., 10:30 a.m. to noon, and 4:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. The remainder of his time was devoted to walking, reading, or resting. Einstein maintained a regular schedule of 5 to 6 hours daily for his most challenging problems, emphasizing the importance of daydreaming. Ernest Hemingway wrote for just 5 to 6 hours each morning. These brilliant individuals recognized that creative work depends on quality, not quantity, working intensely during peak hours rather than endlessly grinding. The consequences of ignoring these cognitive limits are severe. Research from the Finnish Institute of Occupational Health found that regularly working more than 11 hours daily doubles your risk of major depression. A study from University College London revealed that working beyond 55 hours weekly increases stroke risk by 33%. We're harming ourselves to accomplish more, yet ironically, achieving less. The specific effects on your brain during extended work hours are dramatic. After 8 hours of mental work, prefrontal cortex activity significantly decreases. According to New York University research, your problem-solving abilities for creative challenges decrease by around 60%, and your ability to focus on important details falls by 45%. For every extra hour beyond 8, you're operating with a fraction of your mental capacity. Real-world experiments confirm these findings. Microsoft Japan implemented a 4-day workweek and saw productivity increase by 40%. Electricity costs dropped by 23% and printing decreased by 59%. Employees accomplished more in less time by prioritizing effectively, reducing unnecessary meetings, and working more efficiently during their limited hours. Alex Sujin Kim Pang's book, Rest: Why You Get More Done When You Work Less, offers another compelling perspective. He found that elite violinists who became world-class performers practiced no more than 4 hours daily, while those practicing longer hours, but with less intensity, never reached the same excellence. The best performers weren't practicing more, they were practicing better, with complete concentration, followed by full recovery. You might think, but my boss expects me to work long hours. The reality is that most employers care about results, not hours. If you deliver better work in less time by working smarter, that's what ultimately matters. If your workplace truly values hours over output, consider whether that environment supports your success or leads to burnout. The real insight isn't about reducing work hours arbitrarily. It's about understanding the relationship between time, energy, and output. It's recognizing your brain's natural limits and respecting those boundaries to become more effective. It's about maximizing the quality of your work hours rather than simply increasing their quantity.